PHH Solicitors are your local Falco solicitors. PHH pride themselves on providing a personal and friendly service to local residents and businesses on all aspects of legal work. Whether it's buying or selling a house, making a will, dealing with family issues or advice about medical negligence and personal injury, PHH are the people to speak to. With offices just around the corner from Highbury Stadium and also Cleveland's, the legal advice you need is right on your doorstep. Alternatively, you can call them on 01253 824 216 or find them online at phhsolicitors.co.uk. Hello and welcome back to the Codcast. Today we are joined by Chief Exec of the Community Trust, John Hartley. John, how are we?
Very well, thank you, Ben, and yeah, thank you very much for having me on. Delighted to be here.
Absolutely, I think we're 10 episodes in now, so it's been great to get you in. It's been on the cards for a while. First off, talk to me a little about yourself and what you do for the football club.
Yeah, so I'm the Chief Exec for Fleetwood Town Community Trust, so we are the charitable arm of Fleetwood Town Football Club. Very much working with as a key stakeholder really, utilising the branding of Fleetwood Town, having the power that the badge has across the local area and across the Fylde Coast. So our job ultimately is to go into the community, support local residents through a variety of different schemes and community programmes, and typically they are around education, health, sport and inclusion. And it's about bringing people together. So we've recently launched our most recent strategy for 25 to 2028. And that our real vision is to make sure that we are inspiring healthier, more connected communities. So for the next 3 years, that is our main focus.
Take me back to the start. When did you first join the football club, and where was the football club in terms of the community aspect when you did join?
Yeah, so my first involvement with Fleetwood Town Football Club was actually in 2012, and at that point, the community trust wasn't a thing. It was in the process of being formed. So at the time, community trusts or foundations were then called Football in the Community, and that was really the main vehicle. Football was the power, and that was the main sort of embodying of what we were trying to achieve in the local community. And I remember that my first involvement with Fleetwood Town Football Club was ironically the first League Two fixture that the club played, highlighting 0-0 versus Torquay at Highbury Stadium. And then from there, again, that was in a voluntary capacity. So I recently left college, had a real interest for sports coaching, engaging with children and wanting to develop them as footballers and as athletes, and yeah, just really gained a passion for it. And then over a number of years between voluntary positions and part-time employment, just really enjoyed it, enjoyed the environment. And then obviously in the years following that, Poolfoot Farm was built, and we can just see across the Fylde Coast just how impressive this space is and what it does for the local community too.
Those first few years when the Community Trust is founded, what was the first aims and what was kind of the first thoughts? Was there a few nerves there, or was this is what we want to do, we know exactly what we're going to do and this is what we're going to achieve?
Yeah, I think it's probably worth saying the role that I'm in now, I certainly wasn't in at that point, and again the more strategic decisions and discussions I wasn't necessarily involved in. However, I do remember quite vividly at that point that it was 2 or 3 members of staff plus a few volunteers. And I think we were based in what is now the maintenance office, which can hold no more than probably 2 or 3 people. But yeah, in terms of the broad aims, again, it was football in the community. It was using the power of football to go into schools and engage children so they could live healthier and more active of lifestyles and make better decisions. But then also engaging with different families. And at that point, we were probably engaging with 500, 1,000 people each year. To the point where we're now engaging with just over 20,000 people every year across the Fylde Coast. So yeah, it's been a huge part of how we've developed and how we've grown, and we couldn't have started without that first stepping stone.
Does Fleetwood Town, the badge, the football club's name and how it's grown over recent years, does that help you get into schools, get into growing who you're kind of working with?
Yeah, I certainly think so, Ben. For us, as I say, it's the brand, it's an identity, but it's also the positive reputation as well, that when we are engaging with local residents or with local schools or different stakeholders, they see Fleetwood Town Football Club, they see Fleetwood Town Community Trust. It's a highly reputable organisation. Obviously for us as an independent charity, we've then used that branding and we work closely with the football club to make sure that people are aware of the work that we do and the wider work that we do. But the football club brand, whether that be down to the management, the players, it adds an identity for us and certainly amplifies the message we're trying to achieve.
You say before that you go from 2025 to 2028. How come it is a 3-year project?
No, it's a very good question. I think we were having this discussion across our board of trustees not that long ago. And the question was, do we go for 12 months, do we go for 5 years? And really we sort of sat in the middle and said, with 3 years things can change quite drastically. From now, if we go back 3 years, we were just coming out of the COVID era, if we can still call it that, and life was very different then. And things move quite rapidly, so we agreed that 3 years was enough that we can have a substantial positive effect on the local community. But then in 3 years down the line, or even sooner, things may drastically change across the local area or the world, and it's partly our responsibility to support whatever we can, where we can.
Do you think the football club on the pitch dictates how well you do in the community? If it's winning games of football, it's a lot easier to go out into the community. If it's not winning games of football and it's struggling, it's harder to engage with the community, or is it just you're still helping people regardless?
Yeah, ultimately we're still helping people whether they pick up 3 points on a Saturday afternoon or not. Don't get me wrong, it certainly helps if they have one at the following weekend and we're able to pick it up from there, then yeah, it's a conversation starter. So for example, with some of our chair-based exercise groups, some of the participants we engage in either don't like football, or Fleetwood Town might not be necessarily their football club, but it's a conversation starter. Again, there's befriending services that we offer, and again it supports what we're trying to do is ultimately build better life aspirations and develop social connection in those particular sessions anyway. And the football club and the results and the performances, the players, they're all topics of conversation. But ultimately, we're here nearly 24/7, 7 days a week to provide a quality community-led service.
A lot of player visits gets done every single year. You see community champions. How important do the players play, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch as well? That being a good ambassador on the pitch, but being a good ambassador off it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a number of ambassadors, so whether that be our health ambassador or our education ambassador, our youth ambassador, and a range of others as well. It's a great opportunity for us, for them, to really amplify what we're trying to do, but through the player's voice. We recognise that for many children, many adults, many families, these professional footballers, they're role models, they're icons to a lot of our local people and supporters especially. So to have our message amplified through them is absolutely fantastic. But particularly referring to the player visits, again we have players that go out into different community settings, into different schools. Christmas again is a prime example where people come together, the players come together to really support the local community, offering either food hampers or donations, going into care homes, they go into hospices, and it's a sense of cohesion, and that's really what we're trying to create. And again, for particularly children in schools, for a role model or someone that they see for 90 minutes kicking the ball on a Saturday, for them then to be walking in their school, it's an incredible feeling for them to see their role model sat next to them ultimately.
How much work goes into a player visit, and how long do you start to prepare it? Obviously you mentioned Christmas there before. It won't just be, in start to December, we're going to come here at this time. A lot more work surely would go into that.
Yeah, you're quite right. So we have a player ambassador position which Mike Talentire oversees, and ultimately part of his role is to engage with the players, to engage with the management staff, and also the off-the-field staff as well, that to organise that. So timescale wise, you're probably talking 2 weeks to 4 weeks to start that process, to engage with the players as to who's going to be attending, why they'll be attending, what the session is or activities, and again relate that to their own interests and activities that they particularly enjoy doing. And then yeah, there's again that communication in between, and then it's even the finer details of what time they're arriving, what car park they're going to, how they'll enter the facility, and again who they might meet from our staff, but also the visit staffing as well.
Tally will be absolutely delighted, he's got to mention.
Yeah, I thought he might be.
He gave me a message before, and obviously he also brought like the Dart Stars in the summer when they were in the PDC match play. I think it was Chris Dobie and Rob Cross.
It was.
Something different away from football to not just show, well, we're not just a football community, just we are a sports, we can offer different sessions. How important is that? Because I know they're starting to do like dartboard, math in schools now as well.
Absolutely. No, it's again really, really key to highlight that through the PDC and the partnership we've built with them over the past, I think, 2 or 3 years now. Again, we've seen the rise that darts has had, particularly in the last few years, and for us, you're right that we're not just about football, we're not necessarily even just about sports, but you can bring the likes of numeracy and maths into the equation, and particularly, again, primary schools are seeing that there's real value in young people engaging with something that typically sport might not be for them. They might be particularly enjoy gaming or playing their Xbox or whatever it might be that's of particular interest to them. But actually with darts, it's not a traditional sport in that sense. And at the same time, they're learning, they're developing new skills, potentially developing social connections with peers. So it's great, and I think that's part of what we do, that it's not just the core outcomes of typically trying to increase levels of physical activity or improve levels of mental health and well-being. It's actually, can we improve life chances further on, so when they do leave school, they can maybe go to college, or their aspirations to go into different forms of employment or careers are really growing, and certainly darts and maths form a huge part of that.
When you're picking players to go into the school visits, you have certain champions in terms of which players do what. How do you decide that? How is it decided in terms of the football club?
Yeah, so the football club, the Community Trust, work together in working alongside the PFA also. So each year we typically engage with the players, find out what they're particularly interested in. So, for example, there's some players that we know are interested in darts, as we've said. We know there's some players that are interested in it could be religion, it could be gaming, it could be golf. There's quite a number that's interested in golf. So it's finding out, again, what they're interested in, what their hobbies maybe are, and how we can link that with some of the activities they're doing. So, for example, if there's certain campaigns, again, if it's Her Game 2 or International Women's Week, we can actually promote through our Wrens team, for example, through Fleetwood Town Wrens, but we can engage with different players, not necessarily just the men's team, to make sure that we're presenting the right message to the right audience with the right people saying that as well.
You talk about a 3-year plan, however, it almost feels like every week is different in the community, where the club are offering something new, you know, whether it's Her Game 2, you know, show racing the red card, you know, homophobia projects as well. How important is that, doing that on a regular basis as well?
Yeah, again, it's our responsibility, it's our role. I feel that around the football and the fan engagement, particularly on a match day, that we can work with the right partners, whether that's through us directly saying that message or working with the right people to suggest the right messaging, to partly educate. So you said there about show races and the red card, again a prime example of how we can educate local people around discrimination of all sorts of types. But also, again, going back probably 18 months or so ago now, we were raising awareness towards prostate cancer. Yeah. So again, it's all sort of messages, whether it's relating to health, discrimination. Again, I see us, the Community Trust, as the vehicle to support that message and amplify that little bit further, but working with partners too. You
talk about education, the college, obviously, that's built here at Pilford. How did that first start up, and how it's grown from the amount of students that were on it maybe 5-6 years ago to where it is now?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Community Sports College, I think, has now been operating for the best part of 7 or 8 years. So we work in partnership with the LFE and EFL, also in partnership with the University of South Wales for both our post-16, so that's our further education offer, but also our degree programme as well. And I still think there's some communication there that actually Fleetwood Town Community Trust offer this as a resource on the Fylde Coast for young people that have left school to come and access not just the next steps of education, but actually they can intertwine football, they can intertwine sports, work experience and work placement. So whatever their next steps they foresee being their next steps after college, we can actually try and support them in potentially a football club environment. And that's been really successful, where we've seen students that have come on board with us at 16. Some have gone on to our degree programme, some have gone on into working for the football club across Pilfoot Farm, some have come into the Community Trust as our next aspiring sports coaches. some are actually now teaching on the BTEC programme, which is fantastic to see. That's almost come full circle. So yeah, it's grown substantially and will continue to do so, particularly with our BTEC programme. We now offer a level 2 and level 3, and we are looking now to start bridging that gap between secondary school and further education as well. So yeah, exciting times.
Take yourself back 13 years now when you first started working with the football club in 2012. Did you ever think this would all happen and where you are now? Because you talk about 3-year plans. A lot happens day to day, and a lot's happened, hasn't it?
Yeah, a lot has happened. I think, again, day to day things change, things you can't necessarily plan or prepare for. But again, I think with the right staff team, with the right board of trustees, with the right infrastructure around us at the football club, we can certainly continue to build in the direction that we're planning for over this next 3 years. Going back, over to the last 13 years, on a personal note, I probably didn't preempt I'd be where I am now, and thoroughly enjoy doing what I do and knowing that as a community organisation we do make a difference to local people's lives day in, day out. And that's across the board with all of our staff team, our volunteers, and we'll continue to do so for many, many years to come. But yeah, across the Community Trust we have grown substantially, and really looking forward to what the plans for the next 3 years plus will look like.
Talk to me about those next 3 years. What are the main initiatives and what are you wanting to build?
So I've mentioned it a few times today, but again, our mission is largely working collaboratively. So we recognise that we aren't the partner necessarily to be working in silo on projects. We very much are advocating working with the right partners, with the right organisations. Within the last 18 months, we've also branched out with our corporate offering. So we now engage with a number of local businesses that have formed part of our Friends of the Trust scheme, which is headed up by our business development manager, Michael. So his role is largely to engage with these local businesses, understand their social responsibility to be. And that's an opportunity for us to say, well, actually, the Community Trust offer this, this and that. How can you get involved? So that could be fundraising events, it could be activities. For example, we've got our stadium sleepouts in just over a week's time, and we've got a number of businesses that are engaging with that in both sponsorship and just being there on the night and generally supporting the cause, which all funds will then be reintegrated back into the community. Yeah.
It's a lot, isn't it? Like, talk to me about the sleep out. Where did the idea come from? Because I know a lot of football clubs have started to do it. I think Bolton Wanderers are in the second year of doing it now as well. Why did the football club do something like that? Obviously, you mentioned raising funds, but is there more to it than that?
Yeah, I think, again, for us as a charity and community club organisations up and down the country, really, we're like any other business, but obviously for us, we are a charity. We're having to be a little bit more diverse in how we're raising funds. So again, in the past we may have been a little bit too reliant on grant income, and ultimately we've had to sit down and think, how can we work differently? How can we work more effectively and more efficiently to better our local community, which ultimately works towards our sustainability plans? And fundraising was a big part of that. Again, in previous years we've worked almost a bit of a scattergun approach, where we've had lots of little fundraising events, and we might have raised maybe £50 here or £100 there. But ultimately we've sat down this year and said, actually, we're going to have 4 or 5 key events, and this is the figure we're going to work towards, and these are the projects that they're going to then be reimbursed into. So in regards to the stadium sleep out, it's, again, homelessness across the Fylde coast. Like, we recognise more so in Blackpool, but that's not to say there aren't rough sleepers in Fleetwood and across Wyre. We're there to support them. Again, it's also worth acknowledging that the work that we're doing for them will also be reintegrated back into our employability programmes and our adult health and wellbeing provisions. So making sure that those maybe that are rough sleeping, or those that are sofa surfing from house to house, actually the first step is how can we support them with their wellbeing, getting them back into a routine, potentially preparing them for job readiness. And that's where we can come in, and again working with the likes of the Salvation Army on that project, and also Correlette. We're actually working together to make sure that those funds are distributed into the right areas. And then only a couple of weeks ago, you may have seen we did our Veterans Walk for Wellbeing, which, as it says on the tin, all the funds were raised to go back into our veterans community. We also did that in partnership with our friends at Morecambe Community Foundation, and so we walked 24 miles as a group of 40 of businesses, of volunteers, of veterans, of staff from both parties, to come together to raise money to go into both Morecambe and Fleetwood-based veterans specific initiatives. Fantastic opportunity to raise the profile for both charities, and to make a difference.
For those that don't kind of understand what Fleetwood Town offer, or maybe not sure, how do you convince them, look, we are serious about what we do. How do you convince them?
Yeah, I think it doesn't take a huge amount of convincing, but again, for us, we based that on the last 13 years, the reputation that we've built and the high quality of service that we're able to deliver. And again, we demonstrate our impact. So as part of our framework each year, we demonstrate our impact. So for example, we know the outcomes that we achieve. For example, last year we engaged with just over 20,000 people. That's just under 18% of the Wyre community. It's huge for little old Fleetwood. However, as we move forward, it's also about gathering other forms of impact. So little Jimmy, who might be in one of the primary school classes that we engage in, actually over a period of 6 weeks has his mental health improved, has his physical health improved. And so it's having the data, it's having the evidence, and it's having the case studies as well to back up that impact. And for us at this moment in time, for every £1 that a business potentially would, or a grant would then come into the community trust, that then generates just over £10 worth of social value, which again is huge and making a considerable difference to society.
Would you say, with obviously being a smaller place, I think it's 25,000, you have got over Wyre, there's only so many people you can reach, but it's about, instead of reaching over a quantity, it's got to be quality over quantity, it's got to be good sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. The sessions have got to be of great quality, and again, we want participants to come one week and be speaking about it when they go to church or when they go to and speak to their friends in different social spaces afterwards. It's about then broadcasting that, and again, that's partly our responsibility. Again, we work with the club to try and broadcast that as well, and the strategy was a big part of that. That we expected that it was a positive step, having a nice shiny document and saying, here's our strategy for the next 3 years. The real key information is how we're communicating what we're doing with the relevant people, and hopefully today is a prime example of one step towards that. But having the right people around the tables, being an advocate for us to promote our message on our behalf, is where we're going to, and certainly where we're making strides towards.
I remember speaking to Jamie Pilley in episode 1, and he said to Mackenzie Hunt, actually, don't judge us on what we are, judge us on what we do. Does that kind of echo what the Community Trust do as well? Absolutely.
I remember listening to that episode actually, and thought very much the same, Ben, that we're here, we're in person, we're a practical service, judge us on what you see and what we do, and we will deliver.
10 years time, it's come a long way in the last decade, on the pitch, off the pitch. Where do you genuinely see we can go with this?
I don't think there's a stopping point, and going back to your previous question, it's quality that we're looking for. We don't numbers are fantastic, and we can see an increase in how many people we engage with and how many people feel better after our involvement. But actually, it's still about impact. But for us, our vision is to have our own community hub. So that'll be a space where students can have their own classrooms. It can be a space where the staff have got a fantastic office space where they can feel empowered and thrive in that space. But also engage in the local community, in the heart of the local community, where again they can gain all the benefits of physical activity, sports, etc. It's a really exciting time. The community hub will be a big part of that, and naturally our role is to try and change whatever challenges or difficulties the local area may be facing. We can do our very best to overturn them.
A few questions to finish up. What would you say was the proudest moment you've had since being at the football club?
I think I'd have to say being appointed as chief exec. It's never something I probably set out to do when I started out in 2012. Sports coaching was always my passion, and then naturally over different roles and over a period of time, I suppose more strategic thinking and decision making form part of my day-to-day roles, and thoroughly enjoy what to do, thoroughly enjoy working in the community and working with our staff team to make a difference. So that's my answer.
What motivates you to get out of bed every morning to come to work?
I think it's that intrinsic reward, that knowing that everything that our staff team do, our volunteers do, makes a difference. It makes a positive difference to the lives of those that we're working with.
What would you say has been the rockiest period that you've come through? Maybe any tough moments in those 10 years? Because it's not always sunshine and rainbows, is it?
No, I very much refer to it as the roller coaster. You can be having a fantastic day on a Monday, and the Tuesday, it's railroaded by something. And I think across the football club, across the Community Trust, have also felt it. This last 18 months to 2 years of a transition has been challenging. And again, the reputation of the Community Trust, the reputation of the football club, and the football club being a pillar in the community, it's joined up working. And I think if I'm honest, I don't think we'd have got through this last 2 years as successful as we have done if it wasn't for joined up working between the football club and the community trust.
Obviously all players are brilliant when they go out to the community, but any players that you really think that have gone the extra mile in the last decade?
You know what, over this last decade there's been players that you think they're not going to engage or maybe put off a bit of a persona, and there's players that honestly couldn't do enough for local people and for the community trust. And I suppose as club captain I certainly need to give some recognition to Brendan. There was one instance particularly where normally, as you asked before, the process is that we ask the players, can you do this? Can you come to this session at this time? And there was one instance where he just turned up to one of our esports sessions. There was nothing planned, there was no member of staff from our side that was planning on being there to support in addition to. And he turned up to the esports session, surprised the staff, surprised the participants that were there, and they absolutely loved it. And I think he got one over on a couple of them on FIFA. But yeah, Brendan's gone out of his way, but they all do. I must say they all do. We've got a brilliant squad of players that for me, off the pitch certainly and on the pitch, go the extra mile.
I think that what you've just said there is a great way to leave it, but I think that's what you said motivates you, rewards you. When players are doing that off their own back, you're thinking, this is what we've built. Maybe 5-10 years ago, we'd have to beg for players to come, and when your own club captains come in, you know, not getting any extra income for it, not getting anything extra out of it, he's just doing it for the community as a club captain.
It's a cohesive effort, and it certainly helps when obviously the football club staff are behind the work that we do, the club management are behind what we do, and see the value in it, and likewise the players do as well. And again, we couldn't do it without all working together.
John, thank you for joining me, mate.
Thank you very much for having me.